President Xi Jinping says Macau has written a new chapter in the implementation of one country, two systems. In the U.S., the Fed lowers interest rates but sees fewer cuts next year. And Zelensky meets Macron to discuss a French proposal to deploy troops in Ukraine. Hello and welcome to TVB News. Today is day 2 of President Xi Jinping's 3-day visit to Macau. He and his wife, Peng Liyuan, have been visiting places in relation to Macau's education, technology, business, and culture throughout the day. Earlier this evening, Xi attended a welcome banquet held in Macau East Asian Games Dome, where he made a key speech. President Xi said in Macau, people's lives have been improving over the past 25 years, and the city has written a new chapter in the implementation of the one country, two systems principle with Macau characteristics. Xi praised the current Macau administration for its work regarding people's livelihood and national security. He added the rights of Macau residents in democracy, human rights, and liberty are fully protected. President Xi Jinping started his itinerary today by going to the Macau University of Science and Technology, where he spoke with professors and students. Celine Chan reports from Macau.
President Xi Jinping's motorcade left Xinzhuyuan Hotel this morning for the Macau University of Science and Technology, where the state leader was greeted by staff and students. Xi was briefed on the work of 2 state key laboratories set up at the university, one on Chinese medicine research and the other on lunar and planetary science. Xi also talked with university staff members and students.
During this conversation with President Xi, and I feel so excited and very warming with his conversation, and he have give a lot of speech to encourage me to dig more over into our local history and local culture.
The president of the university, Joseph Lee, said when Xi addressed the university staff and students, he stressed that education, talent, as well as science and technology are of utmost importance to the country. Lee also noted that Xi wants Macau to pursue appropriate economic diversification. The state leader also encouraged Macau students to have more exchanges with their mainland counterparts, not only in academic areas, but also in thoughts and ideas. The university had earlier cooperated with the mainland in the development of the Macau Science One satellite for research on the Earth's magnetic fields. The satellite was launched last May. President Xi wrote a letter to encourage staff and students involved in the project to actively participate in the development of the country and the Greater Bay Area. Xi also visited the university's library and gifted a collection of books to the university. This collection of books donated by President Xi is about traditional Chinese medicine and has a total of 100 volumes. A signed certificate of donation and a sample of lunar soil were also given to the university. Celine Chan, TVB News, Macau.
President Xi Jinping then headed to the Guangdong-Macau in-depth cooperation zone in Hengqin, where he spoke to people with businesses in the zone and those living there. Some of the residents hope the president's visit will boost the zone's development. Samantha Lee tells us more.
The cross-border in-depth cooperation zone in Hengqin is co-managed by Macau and Zhuhai. President Xi Jinping spoke to residents in the zone and people involved in the zone's planning, construction, management, and services. She said Hengqin provides space and opportunities for Macau residents to set up businesses. He hopes more young people could develop their careers there. He also noted Guangdong, Zhuhai, and Macau authorities have to work harder to facilitate connections. Sources said she visited the zone's signature project, Macau New Neighborhood, or MNN. This woman who resides in Hengqin said it would be great if cars could travel between Hengqin and Macau without restrictions. While this new shop owner in MNN said the president's visit showed the country's care for the zone, she believes the place will enjoy robust growth. Meanwhile, First Lady Peng Liyuan paid a visit to the Macau Museum near ruins of St. Paul's this morning. According to the Cultural Affairs Bureau Chief Leung Wai-man, who accompanied Peng during the visit, Peng was briefed about Macau's history and showed interest in local life that blends cultures of the East and West. A group of primary school students also joined Peng in the museum. The students said Peng was friendly to them, and she encouraged them to study hard. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
Over the past 5 years, under the incumbent chief executive Ho Yat-seng's administration, Macau successfully tackled the pandemic and handled the problem of gaming license extensions. But it wasn't all smooth sailing, as Ho's governing team encountered a slew of challenges when trying to diversify the enclave's economy. Timothy Lee tells us more.
Having been raised in an industrialist family, Ho Yat-seng served as president of the Macau Legislative Assembly prior to his tenure as chief executive of the SAR. However, he was soon faced with the challenge of the COVID pandemic at the start of his new role. He ordered all casinos in the enclave to stop operations for half a month, calling the decision a difficult one, but stressing it was a necessity for the health of Macau's residents. In a bid to tackle the pandemic in 2020, Macau authorities placed restrictions on tourist arrivals, with Ho openly criticizing 6 casinos for not allowing their hotels to be used for quarantine purposes. Despite the government's quick response to COVID-19, the pandemic made a resurgence 2 years later. The ordeal led to local authorities mandating COVID tests for all residents, resulting in the city's streets becoming relatively empty for 2 weeks. Ho encountered yet another challenge when handling new casino license bids. Economic diversification was a key issue of his administration. There were plans to invest about 100 billion patakas over 10 years, mostly in tourism, exhibitions, and non-gaming related industries in the city. Today, the gaming industry accounts for just 37% of the enclave's GDP. While tourist figures have returned to pre-pandemic 2019 levels, the enclave saw a sharp decline in big spenders, leading to reduced income for those working in the gaming sector. In a bid to stimulate the economy, the government issued 3 rounds of consumption vouchers. But the limited economic assistance did little to save Macau from a wave of shuttered businesses. On the issue of housing, Ho pushed forward a 5-tier housing system for middle-income families. Yet much of the city's youth remain frustrated with the difficulties of home ownership. It was also under Ho's administration that Macau amended its election laws and national security law to vet candidates and criminalize the act of casting a blank vote. In August this year, the 67-year-old CE cited health reasons for his decision not to seek re-election, becoming the first Macau CE to serve just a single term. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
The U.S. Federal Reserve cut interest rates on Wednesday as expected. However, Fed Chair Jerome Powell said more reductions in borrowing costs now hinge on further progress in lowering stubbornly high inflation. Daniel Rao tells us more.
The U.S. Federal Reserve cut its key interest rate by a quarter point, its third cut this year. However, the Fed also signaled it expects to reduce rates more slowly next year than it previously envisioned, mostly because of still elevated inflation. The Fed's 19 policymakers projected they'll cut their benchmark rate by a quarter point just twice in 2025. That's down from their estimate in September of 4 rate cuts. This suggests consumers may not enjoy much lower rates next year for mortgages, credit cards, and other forms of borrowing. U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell underscored that policymakers are slowing their rate reductions as their benchmark rate nears a level they refer to as neutral. This is the level thought to neither spur nor hinder the economy.
We can therefore be more cautious as we consider further adjustments to our policy rate. We know that reducing policy restraint too fast or too much could hinder progress on inflation. At the same time, reducing policy restraint too slowly or too little could unduly weaken economic activity and employment. In considering the extent and timing of additional adjustments to the target range for the federal funds rate, the committee will assess incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. We're not on any preset course.
This year's Fed rate reductions have marked a reversal after more than 2 years of high rates. The high rates largely helped tame inflation, but also made borrowing expensive for American consumers. However, the Fed is now facing a variety of challenges as it seeks to complete a soft landing for the economy, where high rates managed to curb inflation without causing a recession. Annual core inflation in the US, which excludes the most volatile categories, was 2.8% in October. That is still persistently above the central bank's 2% target. At the same time, the economy is growing briskly, which suggests that higher rates haven't much restrained the economy. Some economists argue borrowing rates shouldn't be lowered to avoid overheating the economy and reigniting inflation. Dan Rell, TV News.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has held a new discussion with his French counterpart, Emmanuel Macron, on a proposal to deploy troops in Ukraine as a means to help achieve stable peace. This as Zelensky also held talks with the NATO Secretary General and other European leaders, aiming to get immediate help to bolster Kyiv's war effort and discuss longer-term security guarantees. Tracy Furness has more.
After talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, French President Emmanuel Macron said in a statement that his country is making reinforced support for Ukraine its absolute priority and will continue giving Ukraine the means to defend itself and to make Russia's war of aggression fail. Noting his recent meeting with US President-elect Donald Trump and Zelensky, Macron said he will maintain a tight dialogue with Ukraine and its international partners to work for a return to a fair and lasting peace. Meanwhile, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte welcomed Zelensky to his residence in Brussels on Wednesday, where they held discussions on ways to put Ukraine in a position of strength for any future peace talks with Russia.
I believe what we should focus on now is making sure that Ukraine gets to this position of strength and that discussing all of this, which comes after that moment starts when Zelensky and Putin and others would sit at the table, is for them. And if we now start to discuss amongst ourselves what a peace deal could look like, we make it so easy for the Russians.
Meanwhile, Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda said NATO should review its readiness for short-notice scenarios.
In this new reality that we face, NATO should review itself. NATO readiness, especially for short-notice scenarios, is a top priority for my country. We must fill the capability gaps in our collective plans. My country will do its share to implement NATO requirements. The burden should be shared by all NATO allies, not just placed on frontline countries.
Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Still ahead, the U.S. Supreme Court to consider TikTok's bid to block a law intended to force the sale of the popular app. Alipay Hong Kong will be incorporated into the public transport fare subsidy scheme. And the launch of 3 giant panda-themed MTR trains. Welcome back. The Transport Department announced that Alipay Hong Kong will be incorporated into the public transport fare subsidy scheme starting from the 1st of January next year. This means travelers can collect the government subsidy by using Alipay on transport such as the MTR and buses. Samantha Lee tells us more.
Since the government rolled out the public transport fare subsidy scheme in 2019, commuters have had no choice but to use Octopus cards. But from next year, an extra electronic payment option, Alipay HK, will also be available for handling fare subsidies, in addition to Octopus. Commuters who wish to pay single journey fares by Alipay HK can download the Alipay HK mobile app and open the EasyGo QR code. Another way is to use the QR code on the MTR mobile app. From the 16th of each month, the subsidy from the previous month will be deposited to Alipay HK app account automatically, which means account holders do not need to go to designated collection points to receive the money. Under the subsidy scheme, if a commuter's monthly public transport expenses exceed $400, the government will subsidize 1/3 of it, at a maximum of $400 per month. Transport expenses recorded separately under Alipay and Autopass cannot be combined for the calculation of subsidies. In comparison with Autopass, the use of Alipay for the subsidy scheme is narrower. For instance, using Alipay for the Airport Express, light rail and MTR buses does not count towards the subsidy scheme. Also, Alipay covers fewer ferry and green minibus service routes. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
A recent study conducted by a nonprofit organization found that more than half of drug users only seek detoxification services after abusing substances for over 3 years. Adolescents taking drugs are also on the rise. Anip has the story.
The research by the Hong Kong Christian Service found that the average age of first-time drug users is around 19 years old. Almost half of drug abusers surveyed were under 18, and around 40% were from 18 to 29 years old. The HKCS said that a key reason as to why drug abusers refuse to seek detox services is their misguided belief of a public perception. A commonly held public perception is that drug abusers will say they will quit, but they never really quit. The HKCS also noted that space oil was a substance increasingly abused by drug users, with nearly 1 in 10 abusers having taken space oil before.
This is a relatively new substance to be abused. When someone is using the drugs repeatedly, that will cause damages in the brain cells and also cause some maybe irreversible chemical imbalance in the brain.
Symptoms of taking space oil can include physical discomfort such as stomach pain and headaches. This former drug user, Luna, said she previously took space oil to forget her quarrels with her parents since the drug made her mind blank. But over time, Luna said she found that space oil worsened tremors in her hands and did not help with solving her problems, causing her to seek help. A mother of an adolescent drug user advised parents to support their children during this challenging phase of their lives. The mother said everyone needs support from family members during hardship. She said if parents do not support their troubled kids, it will be even harder for the kids to quit drugs. She said it is important parents do not give up on their children. The Hong Kong Christian Service said that overestimating detox capabilities and underestimating the dangers of drug use can hinder timely treatment for individuals struggling with addiction. They urge families and schools to actively encourage drug users to seek help. And TVB News.
The MTR launched 3 giant panda-themed trains today in a bid to support the government's development of the local panda economy. 2 of the trains serve the MTR's South Island line, with one serving the Airport Express. Giant pandas can be seen promoting landmarks such as Victoria Harbour and Ocean Park throughout the trains. The joint promotional effort by the MTR and the Culture, Sports and Tourism Bureau will last from today until February next year. MTR mascots will deliver themed gifts to passengers at train stations throughout the Christmas and New Year period. The U.S. Supreme Court has agreed to hear a bid by TikTok and its China-based parent company ByteDance to block a law intended to force the sale of the short video app by January 19th. The company argues the law violates free speech protections under the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Danny Cho tells us more.
The U.S. Supreme Court said on Wednesday that it would hear 2 hours of oral arguments on January the 10th and take up a challenge to a law that could lead to a ban on TikTok in the U.S. At least 5 of the 9 justices need to agree that a law passed earlier this year is unconstitutional to keep it from taking effect, pending a final ruling. TikTok said in the appeal that shuttering one of the country's most popular speech platforms will silence the speech of over 170 million American users and cause substantial harms for countless small businesses that rely on the platform. This after the D.C. Court of Appeals denied the company's request to delay the ban. Back in April, the U.S. Congress passed a law that will either ban TikTok on national security grounds or force the sale of the popular video app to a non-Chinese company by January the 19th. Lawmakers insisted that Beijing could order TikTok to manipulate its algorithm and thus expand Chinese government propaganda, even though the U.S. has not produced evidence of such manipulation. TikTok said the US user data has always been stored outside China and that it has never shared or received a request to share the data with the Chinese government. It described the ban as a radical departure from America's tradition of championing an open internet. US President-elect Donald Trump met with the company's CEO Shou Chu at Mar-a-Lago on Monday and said he has a warm spot in his heart for TikTok. Trump also said earlier he was looking into the TikTok sell-off law. Lawyers for TikTok and its Chinese parent company ByteDance argued that the incoming Trump administration might pause enforcement of the law. In spite of this, senior Republican Senator Mitch McConnell yesterday urged the Supreme Court to reject TikTok's bid. But TikTok still has the backing of several civil liberties organizations. They have made a joint filing to the court asking to block the nationwide ban. Danny Zhou, TVP News.
That's the news. Thanks for watching. Good night.